Hey everyone, welcome to ScorcherToysAtAnymoon.com's first review of the Bandai DX VF-31AX Kairos Plus. We're knee-deep in AX releases already. You can get the most recent reissue at Big Bad Toy Store right now by clicking that link in the comments below. Also supporting this channel, I appreciate it. But this video is sticking to the launch edition released in December 2021. I'm doing this so I can spend time in this review explaining the differences between the Kairos, the Siegfried, and the Kairos Plus because they're similar but different. The launch edition comes with this special display stand, which you're probably familiar with if you've got a few of the other Bandai products that came with something similar. There's a piece in the box that looks like this. It tabs into here. They also give you a separate back piece if you're going to use the super parts. And then it has a single slot right in the middle. There's a little finger that comes down right in the middle, and that's how you use it to have a flat fighter mode. If you wanted to, look, you have two other choices. So generous of Bandai to let you bank this toy a teeny tiny bit left or a teeny tiny bit right. If you want to have it banking, you put that on first, then you put this piece on. And now it can bank slightly in either direction. It only works in fighter mode. That's really all there is to it. Here's a couple pictures. We're never going to talk about it again. And all of the toys we're discussing come with this basic display stand, which is only really about elevating the toy so you don't have to use the landing gear in fighter mode. You get even higher off the ground in Gearwalk and Battroid out of necessity. No articulation of this display stand. It really is just about elevating the toy, and there are different adapters for each mode. Plugs in securely, at least you don't have to worry about your toy popping off this thing, but that's all there is to it. Siegfried toys have a compartment in the leg housing hologram producing drones. The Kairos, being a standard military fighter, instead has missiles in that bay. The Kairos Plus has the same compartment and configuration as the Kairos. The Kairos Plus has the same front die-cast landing gear with articulated tow bar and spinning wheels. The rear landing gear remained the dreadful kneecap stubs where the wheel twists into position. The wheel rubs on the knee housing and there's almost no clearance on the ground. The pop-off intake covers carry over unchanged. I'm not going to go over all the paint details. You could already see there's quite a bit of it, right? There's different size, tampo print, lots of tampo print, all beautifully done across the toys, and that's pretty much what I'm going to say about paint details. For translucent plastic bits, the Siegfried had a little different layout than the Kairos, and Bandai accomplished that on the Kairos by just painting over a little bit of the translucent plastic to bring it in with the nose cone, and that worked out pretty well. For the Kairos Plus, they've gone to a different whole section here, and we got red metallic paint instead of that translucent plastic, which the tiniest of step downs there. The Kairos Plus, on the other hand, has these big, I don't even know what this section is, but it's a nice clear plastic with detail underneath it. So that pops even if the nose cone does pop a little bit less. One of my knocks on the Siegfried toys was always that the canopy was too opaque. You could barely see the pilot figure within. It's got this kind of gold effect. I don't know, it's attractive-ish, but doesn't really make a lot of sense. You can go ahead, open up the cockpit. There's your pilot figure. He actually sits up a little higher over the display than he does on the Kairos Plus toys, which is a nice plus. And that's because he actually is sitting in a seat, unlike in the Kairos Plus toy where they've kind of gotten rid of the seat and he just kind of lays in there. Now there's also this back piece here on the Siegfried toys, and you have this second seat, and you could put in one of the idle figures that comes with the various toys. So that's a nice little touch. You don't get any of that with the Kairos Plus. It is purely a single seater now. Here's the Kairos Plus, and you can see the pilot low riding there, but he is much easier to see through the clearer canopy. The canopy opens the same, and the pilot figure is unchanged. I appreciate the new EX gear detail in the cockpit. You can see the cockpit is just kind of a tub for the figure, and I really would have liked if Bandai had started adding some paint apps on the interior. Now, if you're like me, you heard the announcement that a Kairos Plus toy was coming out, and you thought that is fantastic. Because the Siegfried toy is amazing, the Kairos toy is amazing. If they took the Kairos toy and gave it the Siegfried paint scheme and maybe a new mission pack, that's gonna be a fun and fantastic toy. But that is not what's happened. The Kairos Plus is only about half of what its predecessors were. It does have a lot of unique parts, and some of those parts, spoiler alert, don't work out the best. Now, from just a visual standpoint, you could see the swept forward wings on the Siegfried. Big visual difference here. The other big difference is, as we look more at the two similar toys, the Kairos and the Kairos Plus, these wings on the exterior here, bigger and lay flatter on the Kairos Plus. The canards are a little bit bigger. But what really sets the Kairos Plus apart, and believe me, we're gonna dive into this, is the giant guns on the bottom, as well as a whole new arm structure. And you could see nice tight arm structure over here and sort of origami that's not quite coming together perfectly on this side. And then even if we look at the backs of the toys, things just not coming together quite as well on the Kairos Plus. So let's really dive into that. The differences are a lot easier to see in Gearwalk mode. The Kairos Plus toy obviously has a very different mission pack. Now the mission packs are interchangeable. Everything connects the same way. So if you wanted to take a mission pack from a 31 toy and put it on a 31AX, that would not be a problem. This is how you transform from fighter mode. Your gun is gonna look like this. And you now have this option to bring this gun down on the side. And then you have extensions front and back on the gun to just make it absolutely gigantic. And that's really the theme of the Kairos Plus, is that bigger is better. So you have this really huge backpack. Instead of the integrated gun that we have on the Kairos that's just straightforward, now we have a gun that tips off to the side and is much larger. We have those larger canards at the shoulder. They're not really messing with anything other than your ability to handle the toy. But then as you go down from the shoulder, you can see you have a thin bicep there, where on the Kairos Plus toy, we have this little cover right here, which is fine, and it can flex out of the way, but it makes it look like the arm is a lot beefier when that cover is up. So there's that. And then we also have this much thicker piece at the top, right below the shoulder there. That's also making that arm look thicker. And then as we move down to the forearms, even those are a bit beefier now. So that the arm, really just a lot of thickness added there. It's not, I shouldn't say a lot, it's thickness added all over, but never in a huge quantity. Then we get down to the guns, and as you've seen already, just much, much bigger guns on the Kairos Plus toy. And really all of those arm elements, all of that thickening that's happening there is what's gonna cause the issues with how that arm settles in fighter mode. Now, one more thing as we're looking at this, the one thing I'd really hoped they would address is the lack of articulation on this finger right here. That carries over exactly from the Kairos and the Siegfried toys. Unfortunately, Bandai didn't bother addressing it, but that's why we get fixed posed hands, I guess. So new mission pack, new canards, new arms. It all comes together very negatively for fighter mode, which is very interesting. So the longer guns go right where you want to put your hand. The weight is all in the back. The canards are bothering you up in the front if you try to grab up there. So it actually becomes awkward to handle. It's not really fun anymore. Now this toy super fun. I got no problem flying it around. And that's mostly, I would say, because the guns are so much smaller. It's the big guns there that are screwing it up. But the geometry is also screwed up when it comes to these arms. And you see that most prominently in the back here. There's this part of the arm, this hand part that flips over, and it has a peg, and you're supposed to seat it like so in a perfect world. But what that does is it causes the gun to point downward. So you can't really tab it in if you don't want the guns to look wonky. Some people also had problems with their wings latching in the back, which was never a problem on the Siegfried and Kairos toys. So that's unfortunate. And then we have the new mission pack with that new gun underneath, which very minor issue. It has a tab and a slot. There's the slot right there, and this tab is supposed to go right in there. It's supposed to lock together. But I can't even get that to fit tightly on really any of my Kairos Plus toys until that most recent reissue. And I don't know if that just varies from release to release, but all of this just, it ends up taking what was a beautiful and fun DX31 toy and creating something sloppy and less fun. Now, still, you know, this is an amazingly high bar that we had. And the Kairos toy, also amazing toy, very high bar. So I'm not going to tell you that the fighter mode here is garbage. It's just in comparison to where we were, and you would hope we're going to see incremental improvements, if anything, it's such a definite step backwards. Now, since the thicker arms are what is causing fighter mode to be a letdown, as you can imagine, once you've brought those arms forward like you do in Gearwalk mode, this toy shines. And it's just like the Siegfried and Kairos toys, which did a phenomenal job here. So does the Kairos Plus. If you don't like the giant backpack, you can keep it stowed behind the toy, or you can pull it out like I've got it. You can also take the gun off and put it in the toy's hand, and we can do that again, obviously, in Battroid mode as well. Now, if you're not familiar with these toys in Gearwalk mode, the strength comes a lot from the legs. There's a twist point underneath the intake that lets you bring the leg far out. There is an extension in the leg, which allows you to then bring that toy way forward or way back. And as you can hear, nice ratcheting joints to help support all of the weight. And this toy is fairly heavy. And then we get down to the bottom and we've got these metal legs, which is where a lot of that weight is. And since it is so low, it gives the toy really nice balance. And you have a ratcheting forward and back joint here. And it allows you to get, let's get this out of the way, a very deep rake to the foot. So very aggressive stances there, plus a left-right twist. So the bottom of this toy is so articulated that you can get it into really dynamic and fun poses, and it's very stable when you do it. Or of course, you could use that included display stand to prop things up. The large canards here, the concern would have been, are they going to bump into things? And the answer there is no. So you still get a great range of motion at the arm. That's, again, going to let you pull off some really dynamic poses. You got that twist point there. And even with this arm flap here, you can see that can lay flat and still give you a very nice range of motion at the elbow. So lots of fun factor here, lots of stability, no geometry or fit issues to worry about, and very high marks for Gearwalk. Battroid mode is very similar to Gearwalk mode in that, yeah, we got a little bit slightly larger arms than we had on the 31A toy, but those arms are functioning just fine. They're not causing problems like we had in fighter mode. The mission pack, a lot more like a tornado pack from Macross Frontier. There's a lot of weight up here, but for the most part, it's gonna handle just fine. And you can pop the gun off again, like I said, in Gearwalk mode. And it has a little part that comes down like this. Then you fish in your fixed posed hand, which will look like that. And then we're gonna just pop this off, pop this on, and now it's, you can see the hand has a little awkwardness to it, and it's kind of difficult to find a position where it's going to be angled straight. Now another thing here, the elbows are hinges, and this is a big heavy gun. So you might have some hard times getting the gun not to droop down on you. You might have to go with a really tight elbow position like that to make it work, which is obviously a little bit of a bummer, especially on a toy that has things like ratcheted hips. I showed you that other ratcheted joint there. We have this twist in the knee. Great articulation. In a lot of places, they've incorporated engineering to make sure it wouldn't get droopy, but that's not the case in the elbow. And then we get these big, heavy guns. For those of you less familiar with the 31 toy, articulation was already a big strength. You get this waist swivel here. You have these shoulder joints that come up and down. And by the way, those are metal, and they allow the arm to rotate freely here. So you can go up, down, you can rotate around. And then you have another pivot point behind the canard right now that lets the arm come away. Now there's a twist point right here, and there are areas where it seems like that twist point with that bigger housing that's now on the 31AX could tap the canard spike there, or maybe even the housing behind here. So if you feel like the arm is not rotating properly, I could see where that might be a durability issue. So you're gonna wanna keep an eye on that. You can bring the fin forward, the canard forward, or you can pivot the arm out a little bit, and that should give you your clearance. Now I do have a little paint smudge happening already on that blue housing there in the arm. So there's one more thing for us to be aware of. I already showed you the rest of the arm articulation in Gearwalk mode. Still fantastic. There's this gimmick where the hips extend away from the body, and that lets you get a really deep stance. So like the 31 toys before it, this toy is an absolute joy to handle. Like the previous Kairos and Siegfried toys, this toy comes with a dagger. You could put it in one of the fixed posed hands, go stab, stab, stab. Or you can bring it down like this, peg it underneath, hide it away, and you could stow it in all modes like that. So that's a pretty cool gimmick. We do get a slightly different head. It's a nice amalgamation of what we had with the 31A plus what we had with the 31J. It's not the same as either of them. Again, it's a combination of the two, and I think it works really well. Now you might be thinking, hey, with all that weight hanging off of the back of the toy, isn't that going to create some stability problems? And you can see there is quite a bit. Also, as this thing goes by, you can see they've added a hard point in between the wings, and that's going to come in play when I do my super parts review. But anyways, as we discussed earlier, a lot of weight at the bottom of this toy. So even with all of this kibble that's hanging off the back, it's fairly light kibble hanging off the back. And the toy's been engineered, and the mech, you could argue, has been engineered to have a lot of that weight come up over the top of the toy, which also helps stabilize it. So even with what looks like a gargantuan backpack, this thing handles fine. So imagine you're in your local toy store, you got these 3 boxes staring at you, and let's just assume that every one of these toys is as easy to find as the other ones. Which one do you buy? This toy is fantastic in Battroid and Gearwalk modes, but it's a little uncomfortable in fighter mode. These bad boys are fantastic in all 3 modes. So for me, it's easy to say, I'm happy with this toy. I'm happy with this toy. This toy, I'm mostly happy with, so I'm going with either one of those depending on what my sensibilities are as far as aesthetics go and characters and that sort of thing. This one is not a bad toy. You probably would like it a lot more than some of the other toys in your collection, but it's just so hard to compete with these already fantastic products. So at the end, that's my recommendation. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and subscribe. Thanks everybody for watching.